So now, I put a couple of review problems from yesterday. Problem number 1, it says find the sum of the measures of the interior angles for the given figure. This is a polygon. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So the number of sides n is equal to 5. Now, the formula is n minus 2 times 180. One way to remember where that comes from, this is a five-sided polygon. If I start with this vertex here and make a triangle, and then start with this vertex and make a triangle, I have 3 triangles. Now, we're not using this vertex and we're not using this vertex, so that's probably where the minus 2 comes from. Hello, this is Mr. Adams. Oh, okay, I'll take care of it. Thanks, bye. What am I supposed to do? I can't run out. Anyways, so I'm not using this vertex, and I'm not using this vertex, so it's where the minus 2 is. It's just the nature of it. Whatever the number of sides is, you subtract 2. That's how many triangles you have. What is the sum of the interior angles of a triangle?
180.
180. So I've got 3 times 180, and then, yeah, it's 540, but I'm trying to find my calculator so we can... All right, cool, thanks. So, 3 times 180 is 540. So it's 540 degrees. And that's the sum of all the interior angles. Now for the next one, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, I've got n equals 8. I know that the formula is n minus 2 times the quantity 180. So I've got 8 minus 2 times the quantity 180. So then I've got 6, because 8 minus 2 is 6, 180. And then we'll put that in our handy-dandy calculator. 6 times 180. Well, bam, with the bacon sizzle, I've got 1,080. Now, the reason I did all that is because it says find the value of x. So all of these have to add up to 1,080. So I'm going to say 1,080 degrees must equal, and I'm just going to list all these added up. So I'm going to say 4x plus 141 degrees plus 134 degrees plus 129 plus 4x plus 117, and I'm going to run out of room, plus 132 plus 133, and that's it, right? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 angles. So now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the x's. So I've got a 4x and a 4x, so I've got 1,080 is equal to 4x plus 4x, which is 8x. And then I've got to add 141 plus 134 plus 129 plus 117 plus 132 plus 133. Now I'm going to use my calculator because that's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of numbers there. So I'm going to say 114, oh no, wait, 141 plus 130, was it 139 or 134? What? Man, look at my handwriting. Plus 129 plus 117 plus 132 plus 133. Is that right on my calculator? All right. So it's 786, so that's plus 786. Those are constants. We can only add constants with constants. Oh, I might as well just leave this right here. What's the next step? So I'm going to subtract 786 from both sides. So I say 1,080 minus 786. That's 294 equals 8x. Next we're going to divide by 8. So 294 divided by 8 equals, it's 36.75. At this point, I'm okay with that. Can we have 36.75 degrees?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, this number gets multiplied by 4. Okay? So the answer will be, it won't be a decimal, it'll be an actual number. Okay? Actually, it'll still be a decimal, I think. Yeah, because you have 3/4 times 4. No, it won't. It'll be a whole number. All right. So, anyways, 0.75 is 3/4. 3/4 times 4 is 3. So it'd be 36 times 4. What's 36 times 4? 120 plus 24. So it's 144 plus 4. It'd be 147. Watch this. Times 4. What did I say? 147? This is them calling me. Hey. Oh. Hello, this is Mr. Adams. Who? I sure can. Bye. Alright. Okay, so any questions on this one? Why did I say 40? I said 147. Oh, 124 plus 120, 144. Oh, because, see, I typed it in wrong. See? 36.75 times 4. I was right. Get on my level. Here we go. Solving for x. Now, on this, on problem number 3, somebody already said it. It said all these add up on the external or exterior angles. Those are going to be adding up to 360. How often? Always. So I'm going to start with 2x plus 2x plus 63 plus 64 plus 81. Now somebody asked me, they said, Mr. Adams, does it matter which way we go around the circle or whatever? Not really. As long as you don't count them twice and you don't forget one of the angles. So now I combine like terms, 2x and 2x. Those are like terms because they have x in it, not because they're the same term. But so anyways, what's 2x plus 2x? 4x. I'm going to write it down here. And then all of these are constants. There's no variable x, so we're going to add all those up. So I'm going to say 63 plus 64 plus 81 equals 208. And then what do I do next? Subtract what?
208.
Alright, so we're going to subtract 208, moving it away from the x. Somebody said 152, but we're going to double check that. 360 minus 208 is 152. Then we're going to divide by 4. So 152 divided by 4 equals 38. So far, so good. Let's turn the page. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys, now today technically we're working on parallelograms. Those first 3 problems were just kind of like warm up and review. But what I want you guys to do is write this down up at the top of your paper. Sketch out a parallelogram. Sketch it out without talking. All right. So now one thing that I want you to know about parallelograms, that this angle is always going to be congruent to this angle if it's really a parallelogram. And this angle is always going to be congruent with this angle if it's a parallelogram. And this side will be congruent with this side, and then this side will be congruent with this side. Lastly, if it's a true parallelogram, this line is congruent with, or parallel to this line, and this line is parallel to this line. Okay? So when I look at problem number 4, it says find the values for x and y. But what I know is y, this, is congruent to this. So y is equal to 15. I also know that this side has to be congruent to this because that's how parallelograms are. So that means that 43 is congruent to x plus 16. Well, we were lucky on the first one. They just gave it to us. But on the second one, we got to solve. So what do I do?
Plus 16?
No, subtract 16.
No.
We got to move the plus 16, yeah? So I say 43 minus 16, 27. So in that particular case, we get that y is equal to 15 and x is equal to 27. If we wanted to double check that, we would just say 27 plus 16 equals 43. Okay? Now on this one, for number 5, it says find the values of x and y in the parallelogram where AB is x squared minus 56, CD is negative x, and the measure of angle D is 7y plus 35, and the measure of angle B is 154. Okay? So now to find x, I'm going to say, remember that this is congruent to this, so I'm going to say x squared minus 56 is equal to negative x. Now this one's tricky. We're going to have to solve that one a little bit different than you guys are used to. So this is a quadratic equation, and we solve quadratic equations slightly different than we do linear equations. For those of you that have had algebra, you know that you just factor it. For those of you that have not had algebra yet, let me show you how you factor a quadratic. What I want to do is set this thing equal to 0. So I'm going to add x to both sides. When I do that, I get x squared plus x minus 56 is equal to 0. Now, when I factor quadratics, I like to use the guess and check method, especially on these simpler ones. So over to the side here, I'm going to draw a little box. And in my little box, I'm going to take the first term and the second term. So I'm going to take x squared and then minus 56. Now to find the factors of this, you've got to find the factors of these two terms such that this term plus this term will equal this middle term. So x times x gives me x squared, correct? Yeah. Now what are the factors of 56? Like what two numbers can I multiply to get 56? Yes? 7 and 8. So I'm going to put a 7 here, and I'm going to put an 8 here. Now this is the tricky part. If I multiply 8 by x, I get 8x. If I multiply 7 by x, I get 7x. But this is a negative 56. So that means either the 7 or the 8, I said that backwards, the 8 or the 7 have to be negative. How do I choose? It's the middle term. The middle term is a positive 1x. Remember, we're going to add this term plus this term. So if I make the 7 negative, negative 7 times 8 gives me negative 56. But now I have to change this to negative 7x. What's 8x minus 7x? A positive 1x. In other words, if I take x minus 7 times x positive 8 or plus 8, and then I FOIL, I multiply it out, I will get this stuff here. X squared minus 7x plus 8x minus 56. If we combine like terms, I get x squared plus x minus 56. See how that works? So then what I just did is I figured out that x minus 7 times x plus 8 is really the same thing as x squared plus x minus 56. But now the cool part is, in order for this to equal 0, this, well, let me say this another way. What is, and I'll put it over here, what is 0 times 0? 0. So that means x minus 7 has to equal 0, and that x plus 8 has to equal 0, correct? If you think about it. So then we could solve. Now this is going to have two solutions. So we're going to end up with x minus 7. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Or x equals positive 7. And if I do the same thing here, I get x equals what?
8.
Negative 8. Because I've got to subtract it from both sides. Now, I'm going to show you one last way to double check that. When you factor a quadratic, you're really finding where it crosses, because we're saying that this is 0. So when we factor a quadratic, we're saying if I graph this expression of x squared plus x minus 56, it's going to cross the x-axis at 7 and negative 8. So I'm going to go into my calculator, and I'm going to say x squared plus x minus 56. And when I graph that, if I go to trace and I plug in negative 7, guess what the y value, whoops, not negative 7, it was positive 7. Negative 8, what's the y value?
0.
0, here it is right here. Now if I plug in 7, x equals 7, guess what it is?
0.
Whoops. Well, it was, hold on. Trace, and then I put 7. Okay? Does that make sense?
Not really.
If you had algebra, it probably makes sense. If you've never had algebra, it might throw you off. But I want to piece it to you a little bit at a time. So basically, that is the correct answer, because it's supposed to equal 0. Now, for the other ones, what we're going to do is we're going to say 7y, because remember, this angle is congruent with this angle. 7y plus 35 is congruent to 154, right? Because parallelograms, the opposite angles are congruent, the opposite sides are congruent. So what do I do? I'm going to subtract 35 from both sides. So get out my handy dandy calculator. 154 minus 35. I get 119 equals 7y. Now what do I do? Divide by 7. And y equals 17. Okay? Any questions on that? All right, moving on to problem number 16, or 6, I'm sorry. A parallelogram is formed by the supports attached to a ball, a basketball, backboard, and rim to the wall. The angles change as the basketball apparatus is taken out and put away. Find the angle ADC when DAB is 69. So DAB is 69. And then it wants us to find ADC. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you, we'll figure this out. If I'm standing right here, like if I have, well, let's go back up here. If I'm standing, Mr. Adams is standing this way, and I'm looking this way, and I walk around my parallelogram and I face this way, right? If I keep facing the same way, then I'll be facing that way. In other words, if I walk forward, turn this corner, so I'm walking this way, turn this corner, walk this way, then turn this corner, how much have I rotated? 180 degrees. The reason for that is that these angles are supplementary. So the angles, the angles, if the well, how do I word that? There's a couple ways you could look at it. You could look at it that way. That's the easiest way to remember. Or you could also remember this, right? This is like a transversal. These are parallel lines. These are consecutive interior angles, which are always supplementary, right? Right? And then if that confuses you, you could remember what Mr. Adams told you, that the big angle plus a small angle equals 180, right? So this ADC has to add up to 180. So the way that I could write that is the measure of angle ADC plus the measure of DAB equals, has to add up to 180. Okay? Then the measure of ADC plus 69 equals 180. Now what do I do? I'm going to subtract 69 degrees from both sides, and I get the measure of angle ADC is equal to 180 minus 69, right? 111. Are there any questions on that? And then this would be 69 degrees, and then this would be 111 degrees, and if you add all those up, it's 360 degrees, which is what you would get for a four-sided polygon. Are there any questions on this? We're almost done. I think we have one more problem, then we can call it a day. It's okay, I'm recording all of it, so when I go to Mr. Fisher, I'll say this is their voices. So now it says, find when the quadrilateral is a parallelogram. So now, they're saying the angle D, if I know a certain angle, in other words, what measure for angle D makes this thing a parallelogram? Well, we know that the measure for angle D plus the measure for angle A, because that's what they give us, has to add up to 180 degrees. We just did that on problem number 6, right? Well, we know that the measure for angle A is 51 degrees. So to find the measure for angle D, we just do a little algebra. And that is it. Are there any questions?